The New World beta is over, and now we're only roughly a month away from release, but how was it? How was the game? Is it the WoW killer? Is it the ESO smasher? Is it the Final Fantasy finalizer? Well, maybe. Let's go a bit into detail. The game feels less grindy because there's no real need to be max level, so you can play at your own pace. The graphics and the sound design are top notch. The landscape is amazing. Everything feels like it has the right scale, and it feels realistic without being photorealistic. The town board quests during the beta were an issue. Too much XP for too little work. At launch, the town board should offer way lower XP, but more money and territory standing. The PvP quest board sucked. It only offered the same 6 missions, 3 for PvE and 3 for PvP, although the PvP quests have nothing to do with actual PvP. It's just PvE with the PvP flag on. These quests are very repetitive and boring and not very rewarding at all. I want to see the PvP quest board contain actual PvP quests, like fight a war, take a fort, kill X amount of players. These should be long-term quests that might take you several hours or even days to complete, but they should be very rewarding in terms of XP, money, faction tokens, and maybe even weapon XP. PvP in general needs more incentives. During the beta, I saw a steady decline in flagged players up to a point where I had to abandon my server and start on a new, more populated server to even be able to find people that were flagged for PvP. And a lot of these players were not interested in PvP despite being flagged and just ran back to town as soon as I started attacking them. I think PvP should give unique rewards like skins, recipes, and rare crafting materials to force people into PvP. PvP kills should also always be rewarded with XP, weapon mastery, and tokens, because during the beta, only players that hadn't died in a while would give you XP, and if you got unlucky, just like me, then 80 to 90% of all your PvP kills didn't give you any XP and weapon mastery, which is especially frustrating considering PvP is the best way to level your weapons, and was one of my main reasons to actively look for PvP. When it comes to PvP events, I gotta say that the current design of wars needs to be overhauled and made more accessible for everyone. Currently, wars are just a popularity contest, since if you are not in charge of putting the teams together, you have to sign up and hope that you get put into one of those teams, which is highly unlikely because friends, guild members, and big streamers always come first. And if you don't find yourself in any of these categories, you might end up not participating in those wars. I personally haven't been able to play a war during this beta or even last year's preview event. The 2 other endgame PvP events, Invasions and Outpost Rush, are only available for level 50 and level 60 players, so there was no chance for me to get into one of those either, considering that I didn't want to grind and I made 3 different characters on 3 different servers due to the lack of population. Another issue during the beta was the overperforming Great Axe, which led to pretty much every PvPer using it. Great Axes just outperformed a lot of other weapons in terms of mobility, damage, and crowd control, since everything was so well integrated. Whereas other weapons had to choose between either damage, mobility, or CCs. I hope the Great Axe is going to be properly balanced for release, because I really don't want to see a Great Axe meta as soon as the game launches. Coming from ESO PvP, I'm pretty sick of seeing unbalanced stuff in PvP. PvE in New World is pretty good from what I've seen, although I would appreciate more different mobs since most of them are just variations of the same undead. I only did 1 dungeon, which was the Amaran excavation, but it felt so much better than dungeons I'm used to from ESO. Everything from the level design to the behavior of the mobs and bosses felt pretty good and fresh to me, and that says a lot since I usually hate PvE content, but I could definitely see myself doing more PvE in New World. Though I have to say that I want more solo content in the game. I am a solo player at heart, and even though I want to do more community stuff, my options are pretty limited. With an audience spread over many different servers, it's going to be hard for me to actually get my friends and viewers onto my server, so I will be largely locked out of group content most of the time, unless I go for a random group, which is not always the most enjoyable experience. Killing high-level mobs and even smaller bosses solo should be rewarded with a lot of XP, and XP should scale down with the amount of people contributing to the kill, so that group farming is not as efficient as high-risk solo farming. Gathering and crafting are amazing, and they just happen naturally. You always pick up things while moving around the map, which levels your gathering skills and fills up your storage with materials that you can use for crafting. I love how integrated these two activities are with the game. It never feels like something you have to do, but more like something you want to do. There are a ton of interesting looking plants and nodes in the game that you see from a distance and then run over to check them out and harvest them. And before you know, you find yourself being able to craft a lot of things in town, leveling your crafting, unlocking more and more items to craft. I like the fact that you can minimize the RNG in crafting with certain gear and food, and the fact that you can get bonus items during the crafting process, which can really add up when crafting things like food and potions, since you need a lot of those. Getting geared up in New World is pretty easy. You get a lot of gear from mobs, bosses, quests, corrupted breaches, and your faction vendor. I'd like to see the addition of more focused armor sets that emphasize a certain playstyle, and I want to see more iconic styles on drops, like the really sharp looking officer gear that you can find on mobs. Overall, I gotta say, New World is such a nice and enjoyable game, and I see so much more potential for the future. So if you ask me if New World is going to be the next big MMO, then I can tell you that it might not be there quite yet, but I'm sure it's going to get there at some point. Because I've seen a lot of fast responses from Amazon to certain issues during the beta. No one was expecting them to fix things in the beta, but they came through and fixed the town board multiple times, reducing the XP, increasing the quest refresh timer. They fixed multiple bugs and constantly worked on server stability. So it looks like Amazon's putting a lot of effort into making this work, and that's a really refreshing thing to see. I personally am very excited about New World launching very soon, and I can't wait to build a community over there and take my Twitch and YouTube audience, as well as my fellow content creators, with me on a journey into a new world. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. I see you. I see you. I see you. Oh, what are you doing?